sixth graders. This week, we are going to be switching gears a little bit for math. We are going to be getting away from geometry and we're going to look at statistics, which is gathering information, which is going to give us a bunch of data. And then what we're going to look at today is how to make sense of that data. So today specifically, we're going to be looking at finding the mean, the median, the mode, and the range of a set of numerical data, which is a bunch of numbers. So you could get data in a bunch of different ways. You could, especially with numbers, it could be test scores. It could be a science experiment that you did. It could be how many jumping jacks the whole class can do. There's lots of different ways that we can gather numbers. So we're going to look at first finding the mean of a set of data. So to find the mean, or really what this is asking us to do is to find the average, which is the exact same thing. You've probably heard average more than you have heard the word mean, but they both are the same thing. So what we're looking at here is if I have this set, let's do a little drawing here. Here's my set of numbers that I'm going to be looking at. There are 5 numbers. I don't know why that was ugly. So I have 5 numbers here, and I'm looking at what is a central point of these numbers. So that's really what an average is we're looking at the center. So in order to find that, I need to find the total amount of these numbers and what they equal when I add them all together. So I'm finding the sum of those 5 numbers. I'm going to take that and I'm going to distribute it out into 5 equal groups because there's 5 numbers in my set. And that will tell me how many belong in each group. So 44 divided by 5 gives me an average of 8.8. So if this was a bunch of quiz scores and somebody scored an 8, someone scored a 10, a 7, an 8, and 11, their average score or their center point for all of those numbers is going to be a score of 8.8. Now, if you do not already have a calculator, a pencil, paper, whatever you need to do the work along with me, please push pause now and go grab that so that you can do the next problem with me. Okay, so now we're going to look at an example here. And I need to, thought that would clear, but it's not. There we go. Okay. So here we have a set of 6 numbers, and I want you guys to now find the average by doing what I just did. You're going to be adding all of the numbers together to find a sum or a total of all of those numbers, and then you will be dividing it by how many numbers there are in your set. So go ahead and push pause, try it now, and then we'll go over it together. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go to the next slide, maybe. Wow, I'm really learning how to do this. Okay, so here we have 6 numbers in our set. We are going to be adding 12 plus 6 plus 15 plus 9 plus 13. You get the point until we get a sum of 75. Since there are 6 numbers in our set, I'm going to take that sum, divide it by 6, and my average now is 12.5. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is finding the median, which is the middle. So if you've ever heard your parents talk about the median in the road, that's usually that big slab of concrete or something that's separating the road. That's called the median because it is right in the middle. So what we're looking at is the middle number of a whole set of data. Now, the first thing we have to do when we're finding the median is to order our numbers from least to greatest. That is really important. You can't forget that step. Otherwise, they can be in any order and your median would change depending on what order they were in. So we're going to make sure that it is consistent and we are going to order them from least to greatest. So if this is my set of data and I have 8, 10, 7, 8, 11, I'm going to make sure I order them first before I try to find the median. So I start with 7 since it's the lowest and I order them from least to greatest. And then I look at the number that is exactly in the middle. If you have an odd number of data points, you are going to have just one number in the middle. If you have an even number of data points, you are going to have 2 numbers in the middle. And when that's the case, we are just going to go back to what we just learned about the average, and we're going to find the average of both of those numbers by adding them together and dividing by 2. So we will go over that. We're going to try that in our next slide. Okay. So go ahead, push pause after you look at this set of numbers, and I want you to find the median of this set. Go ahead and go. Okay, So the first thing we're going to do to find the median is we are going to order them from least to greatest. So the lowest number is 13. I keep going and going and going until I get to the end number, which is 25. When I am doing this from least to greatest, there's a couple ways that you can do this. So the first thing you can do is you can just cross out numbers until, and I just go back and forth, make sure you're doing one at a time until you get to the very middle and you have no numbers left to cross out. That's one way that you can do it. The other thing you can do is you can look at how many numbers you have in your set. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And when I divide that by 2, I get 3.5. So I know that I'm going to have 3 numbers in both groups, and then I look at that number in the middle, and that's going to be my median. Okay, let's look at a set of data that has, let's erase that, that has an even number. So now I've added one more number to this set, which is 12. So what does that do? How does that change things? So go ahead and push pause now, and I want you to try the problem, and then we'll do it together. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to, again, order it from least to greatest. So here I have 12, and when I go from both sides and I try to end up in the middle, I actually have 2 numbers in the middle this time. So to find the real median, I have to take those 2 numbers, add them together, and divide it by 2, and that's going to give me my real average, which is just the center point between those 2 numbers, and that in this case would be 15.5. All right, moving right along. The next thing we're going to look at is finding the mode. Now, the mode is the number that occurs the most often. So this actually doesn't take any calculating. It just takes observation. So I'm going to look at my set of numbers and I'm going to look at the number that appears the most. So in this case right here, I have a bunch of different numbers and I have 3 that appears a couple times. The other numbers only appear once, but I have the number 2 that appears 3 times. And so that is my mode. Now, the thing about mode is that sometimes maybe there's not one. If I have a set of data that just has one of each number and there's not one that appears more than the rest, then your answer would be there's no mode. Sometimes I might have a set of data where 2 numbers appear more than the rest, so we might have 2 different modes. So let's take a look at the next example. So here's a set of data. I want you to look at these numbers. I want you to find what the mode is. Go ahead and push pause now. Okay, so here, let's take a look. So it looks like, looking at my set of data, I have a couple numbers that appear more than once. So I have a 7. I have a 7 that appears 3 times. I have another number that appears more than once, but the number 2 appears 2 times. So that one does not qualify for the mode. So we only have one mode here, and that is going to be 7. 7 appears 3 times. Okay, so if you got 7 as your mode, you are exactly right. Okay, now let's try. Let's erase this here. Okay, here's another set of data. I want you to find the mode here. Go ahead and push pause, and we will go over it. Okay, so here, let's take a look. 1, 4, 12, 4, 1, 8, 0, and 13. It looks like I have the number 1 that appears twice. And I also have the number 4 that appears twice. And all the other numbers only appear once. So in this case, I have 2 modes, which is 1 and 4. So I have 2 modes in this case. And that does happen from time to time. But the reason that we're looking for this is that if we see a pattern, that's really all we're doing with statistics and data is we're looking for patterns and finding ways to make sense of it. Because just looking at a set of numbers doesn't mean anything until we analyze it and find out what those numbers actually represent and what they mean. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about is finding the range. So to find the range, all I'm doing here is I'm just looking at really how many numbers are we dealing with here. So sometimes our range might be a span of 500 numbers. Sometimes it might be only 10. So to find the range, we are going to take our highest number and our lowest number in our set, and we're just going to find the difference. Or in other words, we're going to subtract them. So in this case, in this example, I have 25 as my highest number and 8 as my lowest number. So I'm just going to simply subtract those, and that is my range. In this set of data, I have a range of 17 numbers. And then we can also analyze that in other ways. So let's go ahead and look at the next slide. I want you to try to find the range on your own. Go ahead. Okay, so in this case, let's take a look. Our highest number, it looks like our highest number here is 30, and our lowest number is 10. So I'm going to take those numbers and I'm going to subtract those, and my range is 20. Okay, so that is all that we're going to be doing for this week. I put all of these on the slide, but really today we're just going to focus on one of those skills, which is finding the average or the mean. So let's go back up here. So what we're really going to be looking at here is finding the mean. So for today, that's going to be your practice. Later on in the week, we're going to focus on median and mode and range. And that's all we're going to be doing this week, is just finding those different ways of analyzing data. We're going to end it here. We have some other videos and clips that you can look at. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me, reach out to your teacher, and we'll be more than happy to help you. Good luck.